My name is Ethan, and the experience I'm about to share happened in Western Canada on October 24th, 2015. I won't go into details about myself because, in the grand scheme of things, I don't matter. What matters is the story, this story, that has haunted me for nearly a decade. Even now, I wake up drenched in sweat, my body trembling from nightmares I can't escape. This is my attempt at catharsis, my last-ditch effort to unburden myself from the weight of something that should not exist. I used to believe the world was simple, that what you saw was all there was, that logic dictated reality. I didn't believe in ghosts, demons, or anything remotely paranormal. Now I don't know what to believe. My worldview was shattered that night, leaving behind something I can only describe as a gaping, hollow dread. I was an urban explorer. Abandoned buildings, forgotten hospitals, derelict warehouses. I lived for the rush of stepping into places lost to time. The sense of discovery, the history trapped within peeling wallpaper and rotting wood, it called to me. My friend Joseph, who shared my obsession, was the one who found the farmhouse. "An hour outside of town," he'd said, excitement in his voice. "Totally off the grid. It's one of those places." It was the perfect place for an exploration. The drive was long, the sky a dull grey canvas. Rain drizzled against the windshield as we turned onto a narrow dirt road, flanked by towering pines. The deeper we went, the more isolated it felt. Finally, the house emerged through the thinning trees, a two-story husk of decayed wood and shattered windows, its once welcoming porch sagging under years of neglect. Despite its age, the house was strangely untouched. No graffiti, no signs of squatters, just a few empty beer bottles on the porch. But the thing that stood out most was the back door. The boards meant to seal it shut had been pried off and tossed aside. "That was like that last week," Joseph muttered, unease creeping into his voice. Before going inside, we circled the property. An old truck rusted in the overgrown grass, and a couple of sheds stood as silent sentinels near the tree line. Then we saw them, the stones. Scattered across the field beyond the house was a collection of white stones arranged in an eerie spiral. Each stone was etched with strange, almost runic symbols. I crouched to get a closer look, and an odd scent filled my nose. Ozone, the sharp, metallic tang of a lightning storm. "What the hell is this?" Joseph asked, his brow furrowed. I had no answer. Something about the symbols made my stomach twist, but I pushed the feeling aside. We were here to explore, and we weren't going to let some weird rocks scare us away. The inside of the house was as eerie as expected. The kitchen was a graveyard of rusted appliances, shattered plates, and a thick layer of dust. The dining table, still set with dishes, was frozen in time. The air smelled of mildew and something faintly sour. In the living room, furniture sat in eerie disarray, a coffee table overturned, books and newspapers stacked haphazardly on the floor. Above the fireplace, a framed family portrait caught my attention. All their faces had been scratched out. I picked up another photograph from the mantel, blowing off the dust. Same thing, faces violently defaced, as if by frantic, desperate hands. But the scratches weren't random, they formed spirals, the same shape as the stones outside. A shudder crawled up my spine. "What the hell happened here?" I muttered. Joseph just shook his head, unease plain on his face. That's when we saw the basement door. A narrow hallway led to a slightly ajar wooden door. Darkness yawned beyond it, and a set of stairs disappeared into the inky blackness below. "Well, Ethan, upstairs or basement first?" Joseph asked, forcing a grin. I should have chosen upstairs. Instead, I said, Let's get the basement over with. The air grew thick with damp rot as we descended. The fourth step groaned beneath my foot before splintering completely. I plunged downward, pain lancing through my ankle as I crashed into several inches of ice-cold water. The impact knocked the wind from my lungs, and for a moment, I was submerged in the stagnant liquid. I surfaced, choking, the flashlight flickering in my trembling hand. My ankle throbbed, and as I pulled myself against the wall, I felt something sharp embedded in my chest, a splintered piece of wood jutting from my skin, blood seeping into the murky water. "Oh shit! Ethan!" Joseph's voice echoed from above. I swallowed bile. "I'm stuck! I'll get the ladder from the truck. Hang on!" "Wait, don't leave me down here alone." But he was already gone. That's when I heard it. A splash. A ripple spread across the water, but I hadn't moved. The beam of my flashlight trembled as I scanned the basement. Beyond the wavering light, something shifted. A shape rose from the blackness, absorbing the light instead of reflecting it. Then the smell hit me. Rot, decay, death. Terror paralyzed me. My breath came in ragged gasps as the shape drifted closer, its outline vaguely human, but wrong. The darkness clung to it like a living thing, twisting, writhing. Then I saw it, a face, gaunt, pallid, hollow sockets where eyes should have been, but instead there were black pits, pupils swallowed by a sea of crimson. It moved impossibly fast. 1 second it was yards away, the next it was inches from my face. Then it screamed. When I woke up, I was in Joseph's truck, speeding down the highway. My entire body shook with cold and terror. He took me to the hospital. I told them I had fallen into the basement of an abandoned house. That was all. What else could I say? That I had seen something impossible? That I had felt its breath on my skin? Joseph later told me that when he returned with the ladder, he saw it too. Just for a split second. A flicker of something unnatural leering at him before vanishing into the shadows. He said my body went limp immediately after. Neither of us has ever spoken of it again. We gave up urban exploration. Some nights I wake up convinced I'm not alone. I hear scratching inside the walls, soft whispers beneath the floorboards. I tell myself it's just my imagination. But deep down, I know better. I grew up in a small town in New Jersey and went to the local public high school. It was my senior year, and my friend Jack had been assigned to set up chairs for an assembly. I got roped into helping him, but I didn't mind. I got to skip my 5th period math class. That alone made it worth it. After a while, we ran out of chairs and one of the janitors handed us a massive ring of keys, telling us to grab the rest from the basement. I had always been fascinated by those rings, the way they jingled together, each one a key to something unknown. Jack let me carry them. Big mistake. As I made my way across the dusty basement, my foot caught on the leg of a folding table. I fell forward, landing hard on my stomach. The impact knocked the wind out of me and I lay there for a second, stunned. I barely noticed the keys skidding across the concrete floor, disappearing behind a row of stacked chairs. "Shit!" I groaned, struggling to my knees. Jack, balancing an armful of chairs, shot me an unimpressed look. "You better find those keys," he said. "I'm taking these upstairs. Be back in a minute." With a sigh, I switched on my phone's flashlight and started searching. Crawling on my hands and knees, I ran my fingers along the floor, but the keys were nowhere in sight. Frustrated, I began shifting some chairs out of the way. And then I saw it. Near the wall, hidden behind the chairs, was a hole in the floor. It was roughly the size of 2 fists, irregular around the edges, like something had eaten away at the concrete. I hesitated, not particularly eager to stick my hand into a strange hole in my school's basement. I set my phone on top of it and snapped a picture. When I checked the screen, I could just make out the keyring partially caught on something jutting from the side of the hole. Begrudgingly, I reached in. The second my fingers wrapped around the cold metal, I felt it, a sharp sting like a paper cut but deeper. I yanked my hand back. The keys came with me, slick with some kind of thick, grey mucus. I gagged and wiped my hand on my jeans. My thumb throbbed where I'd been cut, a thin, inch-long scratch running up the side. Shuddering, I turned back to my phone to delete the picture. But something made me stop. There was something else in the image. In the corner of the frame, just barely visible, was a shape, a tiny, clawed hand. 3 bony fingers stretched out from a palm too small to belong to any person. A chill ran down my spine. I took another picture, angling my phone deeper into the hole. What I saw nearly made me drop the damn thing. The hole led into a tunnel, which opened into a hidden chamber beneath the basement. The room was windowless, doorless, with walls and a ceiling lined with thousands of needle-like spines protruding at irregular angles. Some of them extended up into the hole, one of which must have cut me. But that wasn't the worst part. The floor was covered in grey slime, the same mucus coating my hand. And writhing within it were things, hundreds, maybe thousands of tiny, misshapen creatures. They pulsed and twisted, their stubby arms clawing at one another. Their legs weren't legs at all, but thin, tendril-like appendages, and their mouths rows upon rows of jagged, needle-sharp teeth, identical to the spines on the walls. I was still staring at the screen when Jack came back. "What's taking you so?" he began, but then I shoved the phone at him. He took one look and turned pale. We didn't stick around. Grabbing as many chairs as we could carry, we bolted up the stairs and didn't look back. The photos spread quickly through school, passing from phone to phone. Some people thought it was fake. Others whispered rumors about an old basement below the basement, one that was supposed to have been sealed off decades ago. Meanwhile, I started having nightmares. In my dreams, I was back in the basement, searching for the keys. But when I reached into the hole, something yanked my arm inside. I'd wake up sweating, the sensation of gnashing teeth still lingering on my skin. At first, I thought it was just paranoia, but then I started noticing more holes, small ones appearing in random corners of the school, some in the walls, others near the floor. The spines inside them reached out, almost as if they were growing. By the time graduation rolled around, I was desperate to leave. I packed up for college, relieved to be moving halfway across the country to St. Louis. While emptying my closet, I found a hole in the wall. Without thinking, I covered it with duct tape. Then, just to be safe, I nailed a piece of plywood over it. Out of sight, out of mind. For a while, things got better. I settled into college, started a new life, and convinced myself that stress and paranoia had warped my memories. I even lost the photo in a phone upgrade. It was easier to believe that the whole thing had been a product of my imagination. And then today happened. I was walking home from dinner, taking a shortcut through an alley. And I saw it. A hole peeking out from behind a dumpster. It was larger than before, leaking grey mucus, and the spines inside gleamed under the streetlight. I ran all the way home. When I reached my apartment, I leaned against the wall, trying to catch my breath. My heart was pounding. Then I felt it, a sharp prick against my back. Turning slowly, I saw it on the wall near my kitchen, a hole, small but widening, and inside the spines were growing, waiting. I pulled the mask over my face and crept up the stairs, my excitement mounting with each creaky step. The air inside the mask was thick, my breath hot against my skin, unable to fully escape through the narrow slit of the mouth. At the top of the stairs, I paused, listening. The house was quiet except for the distant sound of running water. She was in the kitchen. I slipped off my shoes, careful not to let the hardwood floor betray my approach. As I moved closer, another sound joined the water, a voice. For a moment I tensed. Did she have company? I hesitated, then took a few more steps. Number. It was just a podcast playing over the speakers. Peering around the corner, I spotted her at the sink, her back turned to me, brunette hair pulled up in a loose bun. This was it. I lunged forward, grabbing her shoulder. She spun, her eyes going wide in shock. For a split second, I saw my reflection in them. The mask, with its uneven eyes and grotesque double row of carved teeth. Then she screamed. Before I could react, her knee shot up into my groin, pain exploding through my body. I doubled over with a groan, staggering backward into the kitchen island. She was already grabbing a knife. Wait, it's me!" I gasped, yanking the mask off. She froze, knife raised mid-air, chest heaving. Her face shifted from terror to fury. "What the hell, Bill?" I coughed, still curled over in pain. "It was just a joke," I wheezed. "Found the mask in the basement. Thought I'd give you a little scare." "A little scare? Jesus, I nearly killed you." She threw the knife back into the sink and glared at me. "Where the hell did you get that thing?" I winced, straightening up. Like I said, in the basement. I think it was Dad's. She bent down and picked up the mask, turning it over in her hands. It was heavy, stone, maybe, or some kind of ancient ceramic. 2 round eye holes sat at slightly different levels, just uneven enough to be unnerving. The mouth was a jagged slit above and below it, sharp teeth carved into the material. Then another row on top of those. Debbie ran her fingers over the grooves. "This thing looks ancient. Do you think your dad brought it back from one of his expeditions?" "Probably." I swallowed, still feeling the dull ache in my stomach. It was in a box with some other stuff. There was also a knife that looked like it was made of bone. Thought about bringing it up, but I gave her a sheepish look. Guess I made the right call. She shook her head. "We should get it appraised. Could be worth something." "Maybe," I said, "but I kind of want to keep it. As a memento, you know? Dad traveled the world collecting this kind of stuff. I miss him." She sighed and handed the mask back. "Fine. But if you want to keep it, it stays in your study. I don't want to see it." A week later, we hosted a retirement party for Roger Wentworth, an old friend of my father's. It felt right to have it at the house. This was where he and Dad had spent years drinking scotch and telling stories about lost civilizations. One of the guests was Derek Nielsen, a fellow professor at the college. He and I had become close over the years despite our different backgrounds. I grew up in comfort, following my father's path in academia. Derek, on the other hand, had clawed his way up from nothing. He never spoke much about his past, but I knew it hadn't been easy. When I spotted him at the party, I grabbed 2 beers and motioned for him to follow me. "Come check this out, you'll appreciate it." Derek popped the cap off his beer with a lighter and followed me into my study. When I pointed to the mask mounted on the wall, his reaction was instant. His beer slipped from his fingers, the bottle shattering on the floor. He turned to me, his face pale, his breath coming in short, uneven gasps. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" I frowned. "What?" Derek's eyes were locked on the mask. He staggered backward, groping for the chair behind him. I need to sit down." "Jesus, man, are you okay?" I asked. "I didn't mean to freak you out." his hands clenched into fists. "Tell me right now, where did you get that?" I hesitated. "It was my dad's. Found it in the basement." "Why?" Derek's face contorted with something between fear and rage. "I need a drink." I rushed to the liquor cabinet. Debbie was nearby, chatting with someone, but she noticed my expression. "What's wrong?" she asked. I showed Derek the mask. She made a face. "Told you it was creepy." I grabbed the scotch and hurried back. Derek was still staring at the mask like it was going to come alive. I handed him the bottle, and he took a long swallow. Then he spoke. "My father committed suicide when I was 5. I blinked, caught off guard. "Derek, I didn't know, I'm so sorry." He didn't seem to hear me. His voice was distant, like he was speaking from somewhere far away. "The coroner ruled it suicide, no autopsy. But my mother, she said something different." A chill ran through me. "She said she walked into the bathroom and saw him in the tub, bleeding out." Derek swallowed hard. "And she said someone was there, standing over him, watching." A pause. "She called him the masked man." A sickening weight settled in my gut. "She swore he was real, said he held a knife made of bone, and his mask." Derek lifted his eyes to me, his expression haunted. She drew it over and over again. Round face, uneven eyes, sharp teeth stacked on top of each other. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. "That mask, Bill." I wanted to laugh it off, to tell him it was a coincidence, but I couldn't. Instead, I muttered, "You're messing with me." "I'm calling the police," Derek said. And then he did. I was 10 years old when my parents had the basement redone. It used to have a dirt floor, the foundation resting on old boulders. They had it all replaced, reinforced with thick concrete. The bodies weren't hard to find. The initials had been carved into the wet concrete before it dried. When the police jackhammered the floor, they found 11 skeletons beneath, and those were just the ones buried there. The bone knife? It wasn't some artifact, it was a murder weapon. My father's long nights at the office suddenly made sense. We moved out of the house. No one would buy it. I don't blame them. Derek won't return my calls. I don't blame him either. I never did anything wrong, but I bear the weight of my father's sins. And worst of all, I still have nightmares of a man standing in the dark, wearing a mask and watching.